Hola, boa noite. Munson here with the Portugal show. That means 10 o'clock here, Lisbon time, Portugal time. And it's Expats Portugal's evening show, evening provision, where we have a range of programs. And on a Tuesday night, it's the Happy Homesteaders and Portuguese Positive News Hour in the co-host chair, Dona Jacqueline, the grandmother of our community here and our resident expat elder. So let's welcome Jacqueline to the screen, and by her side this evening, it will be Will Thomson. It's Thomson Tuesday again, everybody. Do you remember those Thomson Tuesdays when we were ahead of the curve that we ended up trying to flatten with Will Thomson? Let's bring him on again as well. Good evening to you, Will, and to you, Jacqueline.
Hello, Will. Nice
to
meet you face to face instead of on one of these chatty things.
Of course, last time it was just the text, wasn't it? And you were on the screen. I feel like I know you already. You've never seen my face like this? Oh, no, nice to meet you finally. Big virtual hug, Jacqueline, to the ground.
It's a big hug in here. Fantastic. Well, how are you?
Part of all of our lives, sorry. Isn't that right, Carl? She's been a wonderful attribute. To the
Absolutely. Absolutely, not unlike yourself, Will. And you know, my intro there. We have had a lot of new people join this community, and in the evening, I think it's fair to say we got a lot of transatlantic friends joining us. So some people won't know you, but you were here from early on, because the whole point of the Good Morning Portugal show, in large part, was to help people stay informed about what they might do and how they can stay safe as an expat. In the context of being an expat in Portugal, but also on a personal level, staying informed. And you were there, weren't you, at the beginning with your understanding of what was heading our way. And as I recall, you were telling your village to get masked up, to you were ahead of the measures in so many ways. And you've continued to be, I think, one of the most interesting commentators and analysts of this situation. You are my favorite scientific kind of person. And Jack, am I bigging you up too much?
I just thought it was more like a Jonathan Pye than anything else.
No, well, sometimes you go Jonathan Pye, don't you? But that's what's so wonderful about you. You go through all the characters, I think, in this particular conversation, the COVID conversation. At different times, you have a different viewpoint, and that's what makes you, in my mind, makes you truly scientific. You'll look at it from as many different points of view as possible. And on that basis, you are my favorite scientific guy. And Jacqueline is one of my favorite faith people of faith. So what an interesting combination to have tonight in the COVID conversation. A person who I respect hugely from a faith point of view, and a person who I respect hugely from a scientific point of view. And I hope others feel the same way as me. Will, I interrupted you. You're going to add something to that.
Oh, I've already forgotten what I was going to say.
Good.
Oh, that was it. I was going to say, you'll never see me reading from a script.
Yeah. Well, that's all three of us, I think, tonight. We've got no notes in front of us, have we? We speak as we feel moved, but that's not to say we aren't well researched or deeply thoughtful about these things.
Exactly.
And Jacqueline, you were saying you've had an interesting day. Your faith has been put to the test, has it not?
Can I just say something in response to Will for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely.
But please, sir. Because you're the boss, you see. Will, I believe that science and faith in God are actually coming closer and closer together in these days as we discover more and more about our universe. So I don't actually see that we're any different. We're just coming at things from different angles. And I loved having chats with you.
Mm-hmm. When you say that, it just makes me think of the professors, the kind of books that you would have to read when you're learning about nature and ecology and our interaction with the world around us. And a lot of the big players you might have heard of, the likes of what's he called, Hitchens, the late Hitchens, Stephen Hitchens.
Yeah.
The brother that died, and Richard Dawkins, for example. And when they're questioned on their atheism, what they always remarked was that the wonders they see in the world are so fantastic. When you start to see the mechanisms in play behind the sheer brilliance of ecology, the little rules, the patterns that come out of nothing, the chaos. It's nothing short of divine in its awe. And the only difference is that I think in religion, it's assigned to it that a sort of a particular narrative that's come from a long time ago, and science just kind of says it's brilliant, and I'm so happy to be a part of it. So in a sense, I think there's a binding there with the sort of a spirituality thing. And I think science, if you really became, if the whole planet suddenly decided we were going to go for nothing but science and got rid of things like spirituality and religion, what kind of world would that be? No more art or entertainment, just people standing around going, do you concur? Yes, I concur. Okay, what's the best thing to do? It would be boring, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be very boring. It's the wonderment and the awe and the recognition that there's just something marvelous going on that perhaps we don't fully understand. And I don't like religion, actually, when it sort of tries to capture things and make it all about sets of rules and so on and so forth. It's no better than the situation we're living in at the moment. It's not telling us what to do, but I do.
Well, that's an interesting conversation starter. It was
believe that there is something greater than ourselves outside of ourselves, and that gives me great hope. So,
well, consider this is a little point that the what if. It's why I would never ever sit around going, you can't be religious, it's ridiculous. If you ask the general consensus of science at the moment, the chances that we're living in an artificial simulation, like a computer simulation, the answer is about 50%.
Really? So
you can ask a scientist, like, do you believe in God? They'd be like, don't be stupid. It's like, do you think we're in a computer game? Like, maybe. It's kind of ironic, isn't it?
Yeah,
and long may it continue. It was Christopher Hitchens was the name you were looking for, Will.
Sorry,
yeah, and a few folks have joined us. Sapphira, wow, what a guy! Here for every program, pretty much in my living memory of the show. Benoit from Porto, and Sapphira, our resident Portuguese man, who's always great for a Portuguese perspective. So glad you're here again tonight, Sapphira. Honeymoon, always. What a lovely name. Hello from Texas. Well, hello to you as well. Howdy. Hola, boa noite a todos from North Carolina. Another day, he's not counting or anything, but another day closer to moving to Portugal in 2022. So I make that about a good 500 days or more. Well, let's count them down with you. Can't come soon enough, says Eric. Good evening to you, Eric. Great to have you. And it was Oregon QPR who reminded us about Christopher Hitchens, where there is a wet and windy 13 degrees C in Portland, Oregon. So, yes, it's looking like a much nicer day here today, Oregon QPR. I've had a beautiful sunny day here in Portugal. A bit of a cloudy one tomorrow, and a 5 days or so of beautiful autumnal, wintry, but bright and sunny weather here in Portugal to look forward to. Good night, everyone from Lauren, also North Carolina, and Linda's here. We have a lot of Texans and a lot of now they did tell me how to say this, North Carolinians as well. We are skewed in the favor of those lovely people from Texas and North Carolina. And sound simply, we're in the Matrix. So and
take the blue pill.
And the funny thing, I mean, The Matrix certainly is a scientific and religious film, isn't it? You can't get away from either in The Matrix. And Jeff Leyland, hola, boa noite from the Cotswolds. Still, Jeff, you'll be here soon enough, I hope. And Lol from Dominique Core. I don't know what we're referring to there, but I'll lol with you, Dominique. Good evening to you. I'm presuming you're on the Silver Coast tonight. Normally leisurely on a Tuesday night. I actually got a bit animated last Tuesday night, didn't it? We were talking about, we try and have the COVID conversation in the biggest possible way, welcoming all sorts of views, hearing them respectfully, just to broaden our understanding so that we're a kind of convergent rather than divergent discussion. about anything really, but particularly in with regard to the coronavirus or hashtag COVID conversation, I've called it. There was a little frisson of upset where I'm so sorry, I've forgotten the lady's name, but it did look a bit eggy between me and this lady, because it apparently sounded like I was being defensive, and I'm glad to report to you that she and I had a lovely little PM conversation. And I was saying, I put my hands up and said, really didn't mean to sound defensive, and I do welcome all views as long as they're legal and respectful. And she may well be back, and it finished very nicely. To give you the backstory on that, because that sort of thing's important to me. And Boa from Mark Rigby, another newcomer to Portugal, up there in Póvoa de Varzim, as you would know if you listened to my radio show with him last week, and a couple of lovely lolling emoticons from Xander as well. So yeah, go on, Will. It sounds like you wanted to add something there.
No, just seeing who's around or not.
Oh,
no,
cool, okay.
I missed this caper. I'm not sure what you're talking about. You feel like you upset somebody. You're one of the softest, most amicable people I've met. So I don't. When your idea of upsetting someone is the kind of thing I probably do 10 times a day, and you're like apologizing. I'm like, I didn't know someone was mad at me. I didn't know. What did I do? Did I say that? Are you still allowed to say that? Is that okay? Oh, oops.
Yeah, that thing. No, yeah, it was. I think I probably don't need to go to the details. What was important to me was how it was unresolved, and how I didn't want her to feel like there wasn't an open door, basically, to the show. I didn't want her to feel like she'd been sort of chased away, or not given an appropriate sort of platform for her views. And we figured it out. It's fantastic.
Good ending to a good story then.
Yes, indeed, absolutely. Susan Allen from Savannah, Georgia. Good night from you, Susan, and right back at you there. Jeff Leyland. Oh, this is a side project of mine. Loved your little reset today. We're sat outside the vets listening with Mrs. L, and we chilled with you, mask free. Oh, you cheeky rascals. But the little reset is basically my response to the Great Reset. And it's just a little reminder to people to fall still, be mindful, be meditative, because I think it's so subtle, it's so little in its own way, but so powerful for us as individuals. I prayed to Jesus for years and nothing happened. I started praying to Joe Pesci, and he broke my bully's kneecaps with a baseball bat. Joe Pesci gets stuff done. Well, it's about the faith, I suspect, more than anything, the power of faith. So well done, Eugene, for that rather unusual approach.
That's a quote. That's a quote. That what just came up. I think Keanu Reeves or somebody said that about Joe Pesci.
Oh, I see, Eugene.
I think he's quoting somebody.
Yeah, it's that's quite a good source. We're talking about the Matrix, aren't we? So why not quote Keanu then? Yeah. Okay. So tonight we continue, with the COVID conversation, really in the broadest sense, about self-help, health, mental and physical. Will's got a lot to say on that. Jacqueline's got a lot to say on that. Jacqueline, you were saying before we came on that you've had a somewhat testing day. There was talk of hot chocolate, and you were saying, I think I might need something a bit stronger than hot chocolate. What's been going on for you today?
Well, no, I don't need it now, actually, but I would be celebrating with it if I needed something stronger now.
Okay, yeah,
but
cool.
I did have quite a bad start to the day, and I suppose I need to go back one. I have a routine that I do really just before I go to sleep, and usually when I wake up in the morning, straight away, that's what I do. But I missed it because I was so busy thinking about various bits of news that I'd had, and also some things that I'd been investigating, which I was getting sort of quite upset about and feeling as if the world was on my shoulders instead of normally giving it straight back to God and saying, this is your world, you do something. And so I missed my own routine, and it went all downhill from there. And I started to find myself being really depressed. And although I've been celebrating having my residencia, as you know, I suddenly started to think of all of the things that I was missing. And I started thinking about my family. And of course, it is true that it's separated from my family. And, you know, I really started to feel sorry for myself and think I probably will never ever see them again. And going down this sort of winding down into this pit.
Yeah.
And then I actually thought, this is a trap, you know, like that. Just came like a thought, you know, don't go there. And so, but to begin with, I couldn't get out of it. But I started to listen to some music. And, well, actually, I was watching on the computer. And I watched several different things. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful music and shows, and you know, very great extravaganza that Andre Rieu does. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's coming to Portugal supposedly in December, but he does these big extravagant shows, and he has everything from he has full orchestras and dancers and children, and he had a little boy, only 4, playing the violin, and great. But they're hugely, you know, it takes you into fairyland in a way, the complete opposite, but of life sometimes. But it's just so lovely, and he lifts people, and he uses people that touch the emotions in your heart, you know, just really. And there was a Romanian playing a song called "The Lonely Shepherd," which is on a sort of pipe that an old-fashioned type pipe that they play in the fields, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd heard. And then sort of the music gradually changed the way I was thinking, and I got back in gear, as they say, and just thought, you know, I really fell into that, and I learned a lesson from it.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think that, you know, the first part of that is something that occurs to people, doesn't it, in this expat community, and something to those who aren't here yet. You know, there's something you might experience, and the expat guilt and that sort of sadness. It's almost like the Portuguese saudade, really. You know, the homesickness and the family sickness or missing of the family, and it's totally understandable, isn't it? But pretty marvelous as well. You caught it and reframed it the way you did as well. Yeah. Thanks for sharing both bits there, because I think it's what can happen to anybody.
But a lot of creativity came out of it, because I went and I wrote a poem this afternoon to 2 mutual friends of ours, called Anna and John.
Oh, excellent!
And my young woman who lives in the house with me at the moment is going to compose some music so that we can sing it to them sometime. And then I got in touch with all sorts of people, managed to be reasonably helpful to people. So I'm feeling quite high now.
There you go, folks. There you go, kids, as well. That's how you can get high without getting yourself into trouble. And Xander's saying it is a trap. Amen to you for recognizing that. So we got an amen. Amen to you for recognizing that.
Starting to have this idea in your head that this might be the end of it because we're going into a dark winter. It's like, no, that's the trap that you have to keep your brain out of that. And don't forget that even in other years, this is often the darkest time, isn't it? As you realize that there's no more going out in the evening. You're going to be cold, and you're just going to have to wait. But remember, the good time is the other side. It's when finally the dawn breaks in the start of spring, and you get those days. And interestingly, I think the way things are panning out on many levels, it's looking like that's going to be timed just right with everything. I think it's still going to be difficult for a month or so, but I don't see anything on the level that we've seen for a whole year. I don't see anything going much past sort of January at all. So when it starts to get warmer and brighter, you start getting out planting your garden, I think at the same time it's going to be maybe those days when we can say, yeah, no more masks, no more no hugging, that kind of stuff. All that might just come back in the early spring.
Will, that is the second time you've made my spine tingle tonight. That is so lovely to hear. And I know you've considered it from many angles, so I take that seriously from you. And the other time was when you were talking about how the atheistic view of nature is a divine experience. That really moved me as well. Honeymoon always. I found my mood to move up and down similarly. It says honeymoon always. I think we need to find out if that's actually their name. I mean, that's a beautiful. To be called honeymoon would be quite an awesome thing. But I think it might be a company as well. And I wonder what sort of company. What do you think? Is it like relationship advice? You know, like honeymoon always stay in the honeymoon mood with your partner. Maybe it's that, but I'm sure they'll tell us. Time takes care of everything, says Xander. But time takes time. Oh, that's profound, isn't it? Marvelous.
Yeah, our superpowers now are patience and
yes,
more patience, just a little bit more patience. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
And the things you always talk about, Carl, which is making sure that, I mean, some people are falling through the cracks quite badly, and that's the scare. There's no scary thing really about the virus anymore. The scary thing now is the people who might fall through the cracks and not be noticed. So things like these meetings that we have, reaching out to people, yeah, that's the battle now, I think.
Yeah, indeed. So a mixture of patience and community awareness is the Thomson prescription, or part of it tonight, and we'll continue to sort of develop the conversation here and welcoming your input, everybody who's watching, because there is some lovely input coming in. Yes, honeymoon always is Dan. My wife and I have a travel blog. What a lovely context for a travel blog, that it's like being on permanent honeymoon. How fantastic is that? I've officiated at 3 weddings now, and one of the things I've done at 2 of them is get a little pot of honey. When I'm not a recognized or registered official, but people have asked me to do a little bit of a ceremony for them. And one thing that my friend Hillary, who is a reverend, suggested and did at one of her ceremonies that I borrowed, was this moment where you have a little pot of honey. Because I think there was a tradition where, and why it's called the honeymoon, it's a honey month, isn't it? And you put a little bit of honey on each of or you invite the bride and groom or whoever's getting wed to dab a little bit of honey on their lips, each of them, and for them to, as a reminder, to speak sweetly to each other for a whole month, which I think is a beautiful start to a relationship. To have that affirmation from the get-go and see if you can be nice to each other for a month is a pretty cracking start in a marriage. Not an easy thing to do, and there may be months after that where it doesn't always happen. But I thought, what a lovely thing, and I think I understand that's the root of the honeymoon idea, the word. Will?
That's lovely.
Is that the first month of marriage or the month before you get married? Because it sounds like a good idea to trial before you get married, and if it doesn't work, then
you see, that's why
say, okay, no.
I told you he was a scientist. He's testing it out. He's doing an experiment before the wedding with the honey.
I went through this just without the honey, and I wish I'd done the test before I got married. I remember standing there the day before going, darling, are you sure this is a good idea? We've kind of rushed into this. It's not looking very good. She's like, no, I'm just stressed. It'll be fine. I'm like, are you sure? Because it doesn't look fine. 3 years later, she's like, yeah, no, you were right. Never mind.
Oh, isn't it funny that the wedding day is like perhaps one of the most stressful, as well as one of the most beautiful days of one's life? Because you only get married 2 or 3 times. In the modern age, I've lived in Brazil and want to move to Portugal next year. Is the other comment, but I don't want to lose any of these, so permit me, folks, to read these out. Jennifer's here tonight, and I was going to dare myself to pronounce her name, Jennifer Gizeka. I'm going to go with Gizik or Gizeka. Just discovered your show, enjoying. Thank you very much. We hope to retire in Portugal in about 4 years. Good choice, Jennifer. Good choice. That was a George Carlin quote there. Will, Oregon says, while we're on the subject of faith and hot chocolate, they had a song called I Believe in Miracles. Nice connection, Oregon. Very nice. Very good. I think there is a belief in miracles around this part of the woods tonight. I mean, it's a miracle in many ways that we even do this, isn't it? I give thanks in this moment for the fact that, you know, we've got Jacqueline in Caldas where they have the lovely bureaucrats, and we have Will's there in Obidos, or near to Obidos. So these two folks are in the Silver Coast. I'm up in Anadia, and we are united via this technology. I mean, you know, science, you could say on the one hand made it possible, but I'm going to give it a bit of credit here. It's God-given, divinely inspired, and incredible bit of science and technology that brings us all together for all of these shows. Can I get another amen?
That sounds like you, Carl.
The right resonance, probably the light resonance as well. The right resonance can be powerfully healing and uplifting from Jeff. Jeff knows a lot about healing and the human body and self-help and complementary integrated health. Great person to have, community. And I love that, Xander. Time takes care of everything. Time takes time. That's superb. Oregon, I'll make the couple even sweeter. Oh, it'll make. I thought you said I'll make. It'll make the couple even sweeter on each other. Very good, Oregon. Some fantastic input from you. And lol, Will's honey idea. Xander liking Will's take on that. And hola bonoit. And you actually could try it with a few different people. We could come up with. Thank you, Anne, for that. Hola bonoit to you as well. Maybe there's a sort of what's it called? A Tinder with honey, where you don't just get straight down to it as these modern folks tend to do. Honestly, what are they like? But you meet up and you just put a bit of honey on each other's lips and see how it goes for a month. And then if that works out, you're on for a decent relationship. But like you said, Will, patience is. There's not many people
that go to work and stuff with honey dripping off your mouth for like a month or what? How does this work? I really don't get it.
People will say to you, "Are you on that new dating site? Honey Tinder or whatever?" Yeah, it's going pretty well. It's going pretty. Not a bad word has come out of my mouth for 2 weeks now. I hope I can keep it up for another 2 weeks. And I know that person will be right for me, if they can do that. Right? Okay. Enough of these ideas. This is not the Dragon's Den. Yes. The thing I wanted to ask you, Will, given that you're here and it's now a Thomson Tuesday, because we haven't spoken to you for a while, the arc of this thing, like I said before, you were there at the beginning. You seemed to know what was going to happen. You were first in your village, and they were thinking, what's this bloke on about? And it turns out you're absolutely right about things. And then a lot's happened since then. So how are you seeing this now from this perspective? And I think you wanted to talk a little bit about where people are getting their information from, their sources, just to chuck in the mix as well.
I'm kind of curious because people, the discussion about I've done my research, go do your research. But from the start, that I was like, as soon as I realized that this was happening, it's been my professional career. It was my dissertation. I've been doing this pandemic, epidemic, disease stuff for quite a long time. So when I was, like they say, Bill Gates predicted this thing. It's like, no, every epidemiologist, if you'd have asked them in 2017 and said, is there a pandemic coming? They would have said, yeah, there is. What's it going to be? Probably a coronavirus. Where from? Probably China. Like, it was known that this was, it was the logical explanation and so on. I've completely gone off on one, haven't I? Already.
No, please keep going.
So when the first thing about, there was like 99 test cases, 49 of them were vendors, 2 of them were shoppers, 51% of them had comorbidities, and from that basic information, you could instantly see it was like, first of all, you had to think, is China telling the truth? This is also the BBC, so is this corrupted data? It looked okay, and what it was saying was a highly transmissive, not just airborne. This must have been touchy-feely, because there's no way that 49 vendors would have A, been sitting around eating the same soup, or B, there's no way they could have all got it, and not the shoppers all got it as well. So they must have done something like shared a bathroom, or been out the back smoking together, something like that. Now, I lived in China when SARS-1 was there, so I know what it was like with all the mass and the meat markets and so on. So I could just think it's like, this is the one we've been worried about, highly transmissive, but not scarily dangerous enough to just stop everything. And then you shift your focus and you go, right, how's our government in terms of being ready for this? And it was like, oh no, we've got the Conservatives in charge and they have been annihilating the NHS for a decade. This is going to be bad. And it was like, that's when we first started talking. Do you remember, Carl? It was, I think it was me, you and Jason Horton.
Oh, yes.
And I was like, I did that crazy gorilla face being like, guys, you're about to lose your tourism. You're going to lose your football. Airplanes are going to get shut down, plant a garden.
Yes.
And you were like, yes, sir. That was like where it started for me. It was like, right, this is red alert. This is going to happen.
Yeah.
But I was already doing the maths that was predicting the kind of stuff we're in now. We're talking about economic disaster. We're talking about collateral damage. You can see now the sheer impact that something like this can have, which is why at the start I was shouting so hard. It was like, we've got to nip this in the bud right now. But it didn't go that way. And I think the next things we talked about, me and you, was sort of like, we were talking about the idea is to stop the hospitals collapsing. And then it was what can we do? We can get sunshine, we can get vitamins, we can get healthy, we can do all those things. And that's when it all sort of, me and you sort of got together, and it's been like that ever since.
Yes. There's not a day gone by where you haven't thought about it, sometimes so deeply and seriously that I think, it's been quite a pressure for you, hasn't it? But you were saying there, and I mentioned that to acknowledge you and your seriousness about this. And how much we kind of owe you as well, I think, in retrospect. And you were saying there we kind of didn't respond well enough, was a suggestion. So you should have you think we should have locked down or responded more cohesively across the globe to halt this? Was that the letdown?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, they often say that the WHO's hands are essentially tied behind their back because they're not an actual force with any political power. All they can do is give advice. But that just smacks of just no, I think all the epidemiologists, independent scientists like me, were sort of like, right, it's our job to sort of join in and say, well, let's get ready. What we didn't expect was the complete lack of emphasis from the people who were supposed to be in charge. It was like suddenly the leader had no head. It was just a duck squabble at the start, don't wear masks, don't shut the airplanes down. Yeah, gatherings are okay. We don't know if it's zoo not. Every single thing that came out was we were just sitting there going, what are you doing? Tedros sitting there 3-4 weeks in going, no, it's not a pandemic. It's in Iran, it's in Italy, it's in 3 continents, clearly asymptomatic, clearly already in 10, 20, 30 other countries. And he's sitting there saying, no, it's not a pandemic. Not a pandemic. And we're like, doing this. What were we talking about before? Sorry, it was about the research, where to get the research from. Yeah, from that point on, when we said it's going to have to be a lockdown, I've pretty much done about 3 or 4 or 5 hours every day. Like I do about 2 or 3 hours in the morning, and it's just constantly chasing up sources. And one of the big things is I've got about 7 or 8 channels where it's either a doctor, an immunologist, a virologist, an economist, and I'm catching up with them every single day. I literally haven't missed an episode of, and it's the equivalent of going to university, where you go to lecture, and then you go to the next lecture, and then you go to the next, and you repeat, and then you go up and do your own research. If anything you don't understand or something you're curious about, you go and research that for 3 or 4 hours, and then you go back, and every day, all those people who have been investigating, and they're getting input from thousands of other people. It's actually a network of scientific communication with independent, heartfelt dedication to the science. And it's not coming through the likes of the WHO or the BBC the doctors that were going on the BBC were just awful. I managed to find some good ones at the start, and to this day I'll stick by what they said. I'm proud of those good sources. And that's what I wanted to actually ask you tonight, was like, of other people, who are they following for the most part?
Good question. That is a great question. And on that note, Chris, hi, Chris. Great to hear from you. Nice big comment, hiding Will for a moment. Not that that's a good thing, but we'll get you back in a minute, Will. The problem is that some people hear Will and think that they are equally knowledgeable, all thanks to their own real facts from their own research. These issues need to be a choice of what scientists to follow, and not whether scientists will be followed. So good point there, Chris. But like, who are these sources, and how would that be decided? And the thought that comes to mind for me, Will, is that it's like we know what the tools are. It's just like they haven't been used in the right order, or with the right intensity, or in unity across countries and so on. So that must be a very frustrating thing for you to see. One thought that's around at the moment is that it's no longer a pandemic; it's now a case-demic. And the whole that's the Irish epidemiologist Cummings, I think he's called.
Ivor Cummings. Yeah. Again, every single episode, I watch him all the time. Yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense what he says, that it's now a case-demic, and that it's like the pandemic was called too late, in the way that the lockdown was a good idea, but not now. All the tools are there, but they're not being used necessarily in the right way, and they're also possibly being used for other agendas other than what might be the unifying factor, which is just to get a right relationship with this thing, and change that power balance.
Well, Ivor's a great one. I'm so glad he came on the scene about 2 or 3 months ago, and he was like a shock jump that came in with all the official stuff that was being talked about. He was really the brute force behind it. Just look at the data. Everybody calm down. You just have to see, for God's sake, the graph goes up, and obviously it's going to come down. I'm no epidemiologist, but I can see a graph and I know what it looks like. These guys are having a laugh. You know what I mean?
Yes, that's a good impersonation.
So that's Ivor. Ivor is not actually an ecologist. He's like a statistical business analyst, and he's so right in so many things he says. And there's just this tiny little snippet that everyone's missing in the middle. So if you said Ivor, it's all back front from here. If Ivor Cummings was saying it's a case-demic and there's only 10% of cases, the official narrative saying, there's 100%, everyone's going to die. The truth is actually right in the middle. It's in the middle. Yeah. And you can see that because there's definitely increases in the hospitals where they're saying this is worse than the first time. They're reaching capacity, struggling with numbers. There's definitely still people. There's nowadays when I go on Facebook, it's like, I knew 5 people. I've had my uncle die. There's now almost everyone says they know people. So it's fairly apparent that it's coming back the second time. So I was right in that a whole bunch of people got this sort of herd immunity. The people working in shops in highly places where you're going to be mixing a lot with people, they'll have developed some kind of T-cell boost. Not sterilizing immunity, but at least partial immunity. So they barely shed it. They don't even notice. But that would have been helping massively at the same time as the lockdowns in most places kicked in. And of course, there's lots of other factors. But those 2 things helped to bring it down really quickly. But it was preemptive. It only made it halfway or a quarter of the way through what it could have done.
Yeah.
So all those facts that he's saying are happening, he's right about. The Barrington Declaration, they're right. Those things are kicking in, but it didn't achieve 100. It's not all completely over. It's like it got halfway and then stalled.
Yes.
And then everyone was kind of tempered down for a little while. And it was still like my entire village. It either came through here all the way or it didn't at all. And it's like, as far as I'm concerned, no, we did a really good job of managing to keep it out. And so if it did show up here again, it could kick off here. But the next village up, they got 30, 40, 50, 60 cases. There's a good chance if it got back there again, nothing would really happen. So there's little pockets all over the country that are still, they're kind of being protected by the other people that have already had it. But if it could just kick off sporadically in different places. But as this continues to go on, that's going to happen more and more. Our power is building as more and more people have either asymptomatic and recovered without noticing, or a severe infection and recover. And that is slowly, slowly building. In South Africa, it hit like a tsunami. And they have a young population, mostly in most of Africa. And it got to 45% of people showed up with antibodies, or was it the antibody? Yeah. And then it just vanished. So it stops at 45%. And that was when it was raging and no one was doing anything to stop it. if you did the same thing in somewhere where they were being strategic and careful, you could lower that number down to 20-30% before it ran out of steam. And then as it's going down, as long as you did a little bit of extra effort then to keep everyone apart, you drive it into the ground.
Yes. And more difficult to do with an aging and frail a population with comorbidities.
Well, the idea, of course, is always to try and keep it away from that top level, from the care homes and the who are vulnerable. That is, of course, the really, really difficult bit. And that comes down to individual battles with every care home, with every person, and their vigilance.
Okay. Well, Chris is saying science is not easy to understand and even more difficult to perform. People need to trust someone other than themselves. That's a very interesting sentence, Chris. That's both scientific and religious, isn't it? People need to trust someone other than themselves, preferably the experts. Very interesting comment. And sorry, Jacqueline, I haven't spoken to you for a little while now, but I'm sure you have a view on this. Yeah, he's a good listener, isn't he? On a Thomson Tuesday, such as this is. Oregon is saying, Carl, what's the vino you're quaffing this evening? So from the serious to the rather light-hearted now. This is my selection. This is research for me tonight, as I often say. But this is my selection next week in the Good Morning Portugal Wine Club. And another sort of spiritual reference here. I am a Taoist. This is a Tao wine. We have a wine region in Portugal called Tao, D-A-O. And I'm really enjoying this. I feel a little bit naughty because it's outside of the region I live in. This is the Bairrada region where I live, which is renowned for its wines. I've chosen outside the area. So I might get a visit from the mayor or something like that, or the local viticulture society giving me a hard time. But I've gone to the Tao region, and it's a Pedra Cancela. And I think it's widely available, and it got a decanter award in 2019, and this wine goes back to 2016. Is the vintage of this one, and I'm enjoying it. So thanks for asking, Oregon. Back to the COVID conversation, and this involves everybody here. What are you doing? Because this is Jacqueline's suggestion here. This is on a self-help health basis. Sure, we are being told what to do, and in that we might not think so much about what we can do for ourselves and what responsibility we can take for ourselves. What are you doing, guys? In terms of your own health and well-being, staying well mentally, physically, and spiritually. Love to hear from you on your own personal position and tactics with that. On being high risk, cancer recovering, I stay safe by staying home. I'm okay with that. And that sounds like a very sovereign decision, Xander. Doing the right thing. And I suspect there are people around who will support you in doing that. And that sounds perfect to me. You've taken a solid decision for yourself there. Jacqueline, did you want to add something at this point?
Well, actually, I'm still in my head on the honey. But I've also been listening, Will, to you with fascination, and I'd actually like to ask you some questions. But the honey thing was actually a very important part of because what they're saying there is it's a reminder to talk nicely to each other. I think that's what they're saying. And because it's so easy when you get upset to get into a sort of slanging match and really say hurtful things. And again, because of my beliefs, I believe everything was created by words, and I believe words are one of the most creative things that there are, and that you can create harmony and peace through words, and you can create absolute chaos and nightmare through words if you choose to do so. And so that's an important part, what we speak over ourselves. To me, that's very important, and it's why I rely heavily on honey has burst, yes. It's why I rely heavily on the Word of God, because it says such good things about me. And I read from one of the Psalms over the two people that were in my house, and they started to read it every day. And it's the beginning of it is, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High God will be covered by the shadow of his wings. And it goes on to talk about no plague will come near you, and various things like that. I try to speak that every day, and I've started to speak it over the people that work here. And you know, I'm not saying that it kills the virus, but it certainly puts your immune system in a lot better place to cope with things. Just feeling that you've got somebody on your side.
Yeah.
I can't, and that happened to me over my residencia. You know, it was like I was so astonished that people wanted to do such lovely things for me, and we ended up having conversations that had nothing to do, you know, that were those sort of live conversations that we all love to have with people, in private, later on the phone, and various other times. And people kept saying to me, "Thank you very much." And I'm thinking, but I didn't do anything. You're the ones who've been doing things for me. And they just said, "Well, we just like being with you." And, you know, we sort of lifted each other all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you try to do, Carl, on this show, is uplift people and let them have a voice and an opinion without having to feel that we have to go in to a shouting match. You know, I respect Will's views hugely about because he's a scientist, and he can tell me lots about the virus. But there's also a big political agenda going on behind all of this, which is, which we can't ignore.
Jacqueline, are you there?
Yes. Yeah.
This is, I've been a bit shell shocked for the last 3 weeks. And Carl, you probably noticed I've gone a bit more quiet than usual.
Yeah.
And it started with Anna Breeze pointing out a .com on a bus station, and it said the Great Reset. And she was like, "What's this about?" And it stopped me in my tracks. And I remembered my first degree, which was the ecology degree. It's sustainable development. It's planet management. It's what are we going to do?
Yeah.
What are we doing on this planet? Things are getting difficult. We're going to have to come up with some solutions. This is an old story since the hippies, you know? They were shouting about this stuff. We got to fix stuff. We got to fix stuff. And it's, you know, and it became my thing. I love nature. And then an oil tanker crashed into my island, and all of a sudden everything's just a mess. And so I went off to study to try and be a conservationist, to protect what I could, the trees, the forest, the fish. And then you start to learn, you're just like, oh, wow, it's not a good time to be an ecologist because your job is to protect the stuff. How is it going? Not very well. Not very well. No matter where I went around the planet, it's not going very well. It's not going very well. And back then, the Agenda 21, the big rich people were always getting together saying, we're going to have to do something. Because if people don't organize themselves, and this doesn't all stop, even though half of them are buying the weapons and promoting all this crap in the first place. But the agenda, that story of we do actually have to do something serious, and it might need some sort of authoritarian telling the people what to do. Because if people we know this, that humanity, if we just keep doing what we want, eventually it ends badly. The question is, can we self-govern, or do we need to be governed? And that question from those people at the top has been there this whole time. So when this Great Reset turned up, it's right in the timeline of when in about 2015, I got wind of some stuff, and I thought, oh, that's just something's going to come at about 2019, 2020. I didn't think it would be a virus. It was something else it was heading towards. I won't talk about that. But and then all of a sudden this happened. And it was like, oh, got to deal with a pandemic. And then the Great Reset thing came up, and ever since then I'm like, oh, what if this is what it was all about? Or even if this was an accident, this is definitely a thing. And overnight, we've all suddenly switched to this sort of, oh, what is this Great Reset? But it's a big backstory, and yes, there's absolutely, and suddenly it makes everything clear. Suddenly you can see why they're behaving funny, why they're deliberately avoiding stuff, why the narrative's gone funny. As soon as you realize that there is that back narrative of it is actually this, like for example, I do not think Bill Gates is trying to kill anybody. I think he wants to play Tony Stark. I know because he grew up selling himself as the superhero. I know because I'm that guy too. I love superhero films. I want to be the hero that saves the planet. I want to be the rich guy that saves the day. And I can see it in his eye. That's what he wants to do. And everything he says that they'll take online, like that cackle when he says, you'll notice the next pandemic. I know why he's cackling. It's not, haha, I'm going to release it on you. It's like, these guys, if they still haven't listened, are going to get a smack around the face. Because they may not believe me, but it's serious. He's not laughing because he's going to start it. He's laughing because he's like, just being a bit smart.
What's that, Jacqueline?
Making lots of money.
But the question always will remain now is, the problem is these people never asked our permission. We never got to say, and that is going to be the big question now. So that's the point. The moral point is someone trying to kill anyone, eugenics, or all that. It's like, are we in this together? And if they're making the rules, why? Yeah. Why don't we get it there?
Well said, sir. Well said. A few more comments. I'm sure you've got something to say there, Jacqueline, maybe about following the money here, because that's another part of it. This is lovely to hear, actually. I'll start with Linda's comment, because when you look at the news, you get a very, very skewed view. We are all over this at the moment. We have this idea of the world and how big we think it is and how many people there are. And I don't think the little human mind can really honestly, genuinely contemplate that. And then the news comes in and it'll present one picture of some terrible situation, which you then generalize as, what the world might be like. And meanwhile, there are billions of people, millions of people like Linda here, staying safe and planning our move to Portugal next year with fingers crossed. Lots of people are staying safe. Honeymoon always. Excuse me. We are getting by looking to the future and staying busy with safe activities, playing tennis, looking forward to travels in the new year and staying busy with work. News on the vaccines has helped too. Charles saying, I was reminded by a friend to do a little reset and go to my happy place more often. Thanks, Charles, for that. My job can be done virtually, and many of our employees are working from home. I go out once or twice a week with a mask on. I'm an organ donor, so I try not to tempt fate with only one kidney left. Wow, good on you, Anne. Isaiah, this is actually 54:17. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. Beautiful. Thank you for that, Xander. Anne saying, just studying Portuguese and planning for a lovely retirement with hubby in Portugal. This is another spine tingler for me. Oregon says, my wife and I are working from home until at least March. That's a dig in, isn't it? And that's a self-imposed kind of lockdown. But we love being so close and having the time with each other, even after 21 years of marriage. How beautiful is that? Honeymoon. I was also a poll worker this year, which helped before the election. And now having the election over, things have felt lighter, I bet. Good point, Will. Yes, that's why he's here. So he's a man with good points for sure. And they come thick and fast at times. We need to stand together against the autocrats and the big reset, says Charles, in a slightly fightier vibe there. But all over the world, people are staying safe and appreciating each other. And it's not what you're not.
You've frozen, Carl. I don't know if you can hear us, Carl, but you've frozen. Are you still talking, Will?
That's when I get a bit scared. When I talk about the big reset and I get cut off, that's when it becomes really scary. Only joking, everybody. That was just my Wi-Fi breaking down for a moment. But yeah, people all over the world going about their business and caring for each other, preparing. I think it's worth knowing that. It's worth being aware of that. And Helen, star of the show last week. Hello from Bangkok. Hi to you, Helen. Great to have you here. And Douglas is here from Wales. Evening all, long time no see. Great to have you back, Doug. I know that both Will and Jacqueline want to add further things. I can feel it. But Jacqueline, you first.
I do think we need to be balanced about this. We've got. Are you? Why like this?
Because of Charles's comment, they're watching you, Carl. Charles, stop it.
Okay. Yeah. I've lost my train of thought now. Actually.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. It's absolutely okay. I'm sure it'll come back. Now, what I think I was saying was that we need to be careful, because we do have a virus, however it got here, and however it might be being used for rather nasty ends or beginnings for some people, or control. There's certainly, we need to also look into why perhaps control systems are being put in place, some of which do sound very unreasonable, and others which are about keeping safe and are genuinely working like that. But talking about being shut down, there are a lot of people who are having voices that are, and they are being shut down. Mm-hmm. And if you know where to go, you can still hear their voices, but it's not because they're using the. Sorry. I'm reading the comments as well. The 5G making me lose my train of thought. We're all going a bit mad here tonight, aren't we? Big Brother's watching you and 5G's affecting your mind. I mean, it's just too much. But I think we need to remain thoughtful, and being a good obedient sheep isn't always the best thing. It is. Wow. In some cases, we need to be selective about what we do, and what we agree with. And I mean, I'm old enough to remember. I've had long conversations with people who were in the Hitler era time, when all sorts of things were used to frighten people. And I'm not saying that is going on, but it could be. Mm. It can be used. People can use anything, especially fear. Yeah. In power, people who are hungry for power over and money. And I think it's quite interesting that most of the sort of leaders that, as far as I know, have had COVID. I don't know what you think about this, Will, but they haven't died. What have they got access to that we haven't?
This is the higher profile leaders who recover so well.
They've had it. They've had COVID. And Donald Trump's had it, and he's not. He's not a spring chicken, is he?
He's many things, but he's not one of those. I think we've lost your sound there, I think, or I have anyway. Will's down to sign language. Are you hearing him, Jacqueline?
No.
Oh, okay. Maybe you have to write down on a piece of paper and hold it up, Will. You will do as well, or put it in the comments. I don't know what's happened for you there, Will, but it's too spooky for words. Let's have a look at some more comments. This is a nice question from Helen. How are you all coping with the measures there? And presumably that's a reference to how things have intensified here. Pretty well. The Portuguese people are amazing, as I'm sure you hear me say quite often, and is acknowledged generally. And it's the toughest it's been, I think. Certainly, since the first lockdown. And maybe even more so because people are tired and frustrated and anxious and so on. So doing pretty well, thank you, Helen. And, unlike a lot of the other people here, taking life into my own hands in a kind of way of like, knuckling down at home, staying local, staying peaceful, just keeping it small scale a human scale. Hold on, we got a message coming in from Will. What's that say? I'll make the screen bigger for Will. I'm going to have to pull that back a little bit. It looks like a crazy message that he doesn't want to say out loud. I'm going to have to science the SH1T out of the thing. Okay, Will, are you signing off for us now?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Yeah.
Hello.
That was fantastic. Yeah, we can definitely hear you, mate.
All right.
Yeah. We can hear you again. Helen's saying, I think the word reset is human.
That was another movie quote for Xander.
Oh, okay. Yes. All right. And you'll find that piece of paper in a few weeks' time. I think, why did I write that down? and then remember, you've been summoned to the man cave by Charles. Will needs to show up for a man cave session, so your company is requested there. The 5G comment. I shouldn't have said that out loud. Watching Carl will improve them and make them doubt them in big capital letters. There's a them in all of us. I think that's another interesting part of this. We are getting mirrors held up to us, aren't we? And the them in all of us to some degree, I believe, as well. That's worth remembering. It's maddening, says Doug, not to be able to travel. Normally, I'm in Portugal at this time of year. My time is my great reset. I love how people are reclaiming the reset thing for their own purposes. It's brilliant. Don't have an aneurysm, Will. It's only a joke about 5G. He knows that. And this is great, Helen. You were so superb last week on the show, and I think a lot of people took a lot of comfort and inspiration from what you said. And this week, our train of thought must be super positive and control our own minds to be awake and discerning about information. I would totally underline that. Sure, Jacqueline will as well, and will. Intentional living in the present moment saves my sanity for the most part. That's a really beautiful human caveat at the end there, because we don't always manage it, but that's a fabulous intention. Wonderful, Donna. Thank you for that. They won't want Will dropping any more truth bombs. It's as if they have taken their ideas straight to 1984 and the brave. It does look like that at times, for sure. Will, I'm at a loss for that movie quote. Help, says Xander. So a bit of background on your SH1T comment there, please, Will. And it's time to conclude. So take as long as you like. No rush. But we're over our normal allotted hour, and sort of closing comments. And as I say, take as long as you wish. We'll close with you, Jacqueline. So let's let Will go first. To sort of round things up here and take us towards the other vital part of our health and well-being, which is rest and sleep. So, Will, what do you say after this hour's conversation and the comments coming in from people?
Okay, I got three things. One, the movie quote is a story about a sort of scientist who's like stuck for like nearly a year all by himself.
Yeah.
On Mars. Have you not seen that with Matt Damon?
Yes, I have.
Martian.
Yes,
he blows himself up with hydrogen and stuff. Oh well, never mind. Number two, the placebo, the stress thing. Yes, Jacqueline. Like after vitamin D, the best next thing in terms of improving your sort of well-being is definitely the stress. So, and sorry, one of the quotes from, was it Helen, about saying about being able to use your mind to control. Carl, we all know this, don't we? Like you focusing on this meditation and calm and smiling. Ever since I did my first guided meditation with you about a month ago, Carl, just sat one morning while you were doing a walkthrough. And ever since then, I've been doing these little practice things in my head. And I find smiling about 100 times easier than I used to. I just think about it and I just smiling. Even when I'm going to sleep, I'll just go, And it stays. It used to be so hard to do. And now I just kind of do that a lot. And it's making a difference. Beautiful. So I'm being much more aware of my own sort of, would you call it spiritual, mental well-being. And it is work. These little tricks and practices you do, it's changing my mental, the programming from just wanting to know about the news on the phone. The last one was about staying safe. People who are staying safe, if they can afford to, and if they're comfortable, then they are absolutely helping in the same way that a vaccine would help. Because with the whole herd resilience or trying to get the curve to come back down, if you remove yourself from the equation, then you're essentially helping. You're helping the nurses and the doctors. You're helping just there's less people for there to be a possibility of it getting around. So it's more than just keeping yourself safe. By doing that, if you can afford to, then it's great. But some people can't. And I think it's the important thing now. We should be able to split now and from our own decisions say, if I can, I'm going to help. I'm going to stick a mask and I'm going to stay away from people if I can. But the people who need to get on with their lives should be able to. And there shouldn't be anybody at the top telling us whether or not our priorities, whether they should be one or the other.
Well said, sir.
That's it.
Well said. Thanks, Will. Jacqueline.
I think people always do better if they police themselves, actually, or they're motivated to help. And I would always resort to scripture, and that's what I know. But there is a wonderful verse in the Bible that says, "Do not be conformed to this world." That means it doesn't mean the world. It means the philosophies that you always keep hearing that keep people down. But be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And we actually do have control about what we think. And you've just confirmed that, really, Will, with the meditation. And I think it's just good to do that, to actually get control of our mind. And as we started the program, I was actually telling you how I sort of lost it a bit because I wasn't deliberately doing it. And I love the lady who wrote sort of about living in this moment, because there's always something you can do now, this minute.
Yeah.
And if that's what we're concentrating on, we don't feel so helpless and lost. Intentional living in the moment. It's the only moment we've got.
Indeed.
When I described my sort of depression creeping on, it was because I was thinking too far in the future and too much in the past. I wasn't being grateful that I'm here now, and I'm in a beautiful place, beautiful country, the sun's shining or the rain's raining, whichever turns you on, really. But there's just always something beautiful somewhere.
Wonderful.
And this is marvelous, this technology.
Oh, yeah.
That we talk like this. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
I will come back.
Sorry, Will.
I just think it's really important. Something I thought about a lot a few days ago. Something this big and grandiose that's come along has changed our whole ways of life. I think one of the most things that are in peril is the culture, the tiny little cultural things that may just disappear if we don't find ways to maintain them.
Yes.
It used to all be songs and stories around a fire and dances, and with technology now, I think we're in danger of losing a lot of the little, that side of society. Even if things came back out and open, would kids still play hopscotch in the schools? Would there still be a Castagna festival? All these things have to be conserved as much as possible. And that's when you need artists, and that's when you need musicians, and you need to keep all that alive too.
Well said.
Like I said, the science, it'd be a very boring world indeed.
That's very modest and brilliant. Will, thanks for sharing that. So I'd like to say a couple of things, and then we'll come back to you, Jacqueline, to close, as you do for us, the show. And it will be a chance for you to see if everyone's done their homework or not, and maybe set some new homework, because we got into that habit, didn't we, last week? So last word to Jacqueline in just a moment. I will, and then also actually comments quickly. Bonoit from Douglas over there in Wales. I will now. Xander, I think, referring to the movie The Martian. Helen, sunshine, D3, vitamin C, zinc, warm hot lemon drinks with ginger, meditate more and see the fear disappear in your area, because it's the only thing you can work on is your own area, isn't it, really? Well said, Helen. I might have to join Carl's meditation. Yeah. Check out the Barefoot broadcast for our current project, which is the Little Reset. Over there on the Barefoot broadcast, you'll see an entirely different side of me, which you may regret. We are helped by watching pro cycling and biathlon as they take us to lots of beautiful places around Europe, says Oregon. That sounds like a really good tactic. We have these magical televisions. They get a bad press, but they do good things as well. TV. Hello from Luis. Hi, Luis de Silva. Great to hear from you. And loving your profile pic there. Yes, revive and renew our cells, says Helen. I love that Jacqueline said that this is the only moment we have. Yeah, and that's worth remembering, isn't it? I know lots of you want to come to Portugal, and that's a fabulous vision to hold, but not at the expense of the moment you're living in. It's really important, isn't it, to not live in the future, to live here and now, and to have a beautiful vision of the future as well. Actually, yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Instead of either or, it can be both, can't it? It doesn't have to be, do we decide that we're going to go with science or faith? Actually, quite a few people do well doing both. They're not incompatible. And we can play it. Go on, Will.
They're very necessary. Yeah, no, they go hand in hand. Like philosophy comes up with the questions, really. And then science is supposed to be the bit that checks out and finds out if it's right or not. Without the philosophy, then you wouldn't have the science. No one would be asking any questions.
Yeah. So, how about we don't get too polar? This is the problem of our time, isn't it? We're so into this mindset of is it red or blue? Is it left or right? Is it right or wrong, black or white? When in fact, let's have some black, let's have some white. Let's get politics balanced again, and helpful and complementary, rather than having to choose in this awful binary polar way. Movement to get oxygen into the cells, even dancing in your chair and lifting arms up. Excellent. That might be homework as well. Perfectly true, says Charles. Donna Jacqueline is dancing already for us. Yes, Jacqueline. Donna says staying present is key. Also, Mika, chapter 6, verse 8. Have I said that correctly, Mika?
Not American or English.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that.
Tomato. Some say Mika, and some say Micah.
Some say tomato, some say tomato. Okay, I don't remember that in the song, but we'll go with
Mika
that.
Micah. I say Micah. Some people say Mika.
Potato. Okay, let's not call the whole thing off. Let's persist. Let hope endure. The child should know this will pass. The children should know this will pass. We must reassure them. Absolutely, Helen. And that's another thing. Keeping the kids safe as well. Not freaking them out too much. I think is quite important too. 61. The countdown has begun. 61 months and 18 days until we return to Portugal. We're with you on that. Thanks, Oregon. Do justice, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. Excellent, Donna. Thank you. Science answers the how. Philosophy answers the why. Getting some lovely convergence of good feeling and wisdom here tonight. I came here thinking I would learn about Portugal. Sorry about that. I had a much more uplifting conversation instead. Join us in the morning. It is, to me, this is all part of it. But yeah, if you took this program out of context, you could have a complaint. But you haven't there. And I'm glad you've had an uplifting conversation. We've got loads on our YouTube channel all about Portugal. Join us in the morning for Portugal specifics. My car. Oh, okay. That's a nice pronunciation guide for me there. My car. Cool. Red versus blue. Are we talking about which pill to take again? We probably are, Xander. We're never far away from that, are we? It kind of brings us full circle. We talked about the Matrix at the beginning. Before we go to you and like proper closing thoughts there and homework check. You mentioned something about government and how people police themselves better. I had this moment the other day when I was crossing the road, or I was driving and someone crossed in front of me, and I thought, so much of the world is on traffic lights, and occasionally you'll stop because you'll see there's a child by the roadside, or someone who needs a little bit of extra help. Might be frail, or their safety might be in question, and you would stop in the road and you would gesture them to walk across. To me, that's voluntary compassion and empathy with the pedestrian. And we also live in a world of traffic lights, don't we? Where we have to stop. And to me, that was like a very different explanation of what might be called sort of libertarianism or anarchy in the most positive way. When you stop to let someone cross the road, both people are involved in that, aren't they? There's eye contact. And then we live in another part of our world, in the rational world, where it's governed by traffic lights, where you couldn't care less about the people. You're just stopping for a red light. And I think that's what our society's become. You know, we're responding to coloured lights and not thinking about why we're doing it. And then there's the other moment where you let someone cross the road in front of you or gesture them to do so. You see them, they see you. You have an understanding of each other. And I want more of the latter part of that in our world, and not so much of the control by traffic lights. If I can extend that as a political metaphor. Jacqueline, over to you. Let's see if anyone's done their homework.
Well, I did ask people last week if they could get a vision in front of them, what they wanted to happen and how they'd like their life to be, and move towards it in some way, little by little. We're moving forward, little by little, we're taking ground. I should love to get the reference that in Micah. Have you still got it in front of you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll find that for you. I could call it up if you like.
Yeah, it's 6:8, but I actually opened Micah to chapter 4. You know, this, I just would like to just look it up if I may. While
I've done it for you. Is there a preferred source for that, or would any that come up on a search do?
Well, you read it then.
Well, I can put it on the screen for everybody to see. I never imagined doing the Portugal show or the Good Morning Portugal show that we would have a Bible study and sharing. And I'm not complaining. I think it's taken me by surprise, and it's an amazing resource to call upon.
Well, I would have to just quote another scripture before you do that, and that is in Jeremiah, which says, "I know the plans I have for you, said the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." Well, I choose to believe that. I just choose to believe it. I'd rather believe it. Yes. And so I can't read it on the screen.
All right. It says, "He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God." There you go.
Amen. Humility is a wonderful thing, isn't it?
Humility.
Yeah.
Yes. Would you care to share any last thought with us, Jacqueline? And then we'll sign off for the time being. We'll be back again, of course, next Tuesday.
Well, only really just to keep that living on in the moment and do what you can do and celebrate your little wins every day, whatever they are. And just finding things to be grateful for, because gratitude actually always flips your mind into the positive. And I've seen so much of that in my life, you know, when I've hit rock bottom through either physical problems or loss or anything. And one of the ways that I got the awful grief of losing my husband was to thank God for the time I had with him. And from that always came these lovely little memories and dark things, you know, that couples have between them, and times of laughter. And I always just used to end up with a big smile on my face because I was reliving those moments, and they will always be there. And I think nobody can steal your memories from you, your happy memories, but you, by choosing not to think of them.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Will, for being here tonight. Great to see you again, mate. Go well. And Jacqueline, thank you so much. A couple more comments. Attitude of gratitude will uplift us to a state of 100% where fear cannot reside in the same space. That's worth knowing. And yes, gratitude. And thank you, Donna, for your input. Thank you to everybody for your input. Jacqueline, my wonderful co-host on a Tuesday evening for the Portuguese Positive News Hour. I think it's fairly positive tonight. Thanks, Jacqueline. Take care, Donna Jacqueline, grandmother of our community. Night, Will. Ciao, ciao.
Later.